Hello family. My phone needs a clean. How are you all doing? I am back again in one of my favorite places in the world so far. Beautiful Jamaica. How are you all doing? Welcome. Let's see if we can put a title. How are you doing? How are you all doing? Are you well? So good to see you. I love Instagram. I actually came here to, let's pin that. I didn't even know what to call it. I came here to write my second book. And as it happens, my laptop conked out, died. So I have really been trying to find the meaning in that. And I am thankful that Coach Nadine will be bringing my brand new laptop with her when she comes down to Jamaica, man. So we're going to have a good time. And that's when you'll probably see pictures of me and where we've been, because I don't have a photographer and I'm really not that crazy to kind of walk around taking pictures of myself. So I promise we'll take loads of pictures and videos. It's such a beautiful country. How are you? I love this filter, but it always makes my teeth look yellow. Anyway, vanity. How are you? Feel free to ask me some questions, but I just really wanted to pop on and just have a conversation with you about presence to desire. Desire is not something that we talk about much, certainly not as women. It's not something that we talk about, indulge, entertain, or I even think have a good relationship with. I think we actually have a broken relationship with desire. I'm just looking at the ladies that kind of maintain the apartments, and they're looking at me like, is she crazy? Like, what's that girl doing? She must love herself. I do. I love myself. Just sort of, I'm at the pool, of course, because I love being by the pool. Hello, let's get some water in there. Yes, I am always by the pool if I can help it. Hi, Tangerine. So, we're not going to show you the flabby bits. We'll just show you my top, my yellow bikini top. Love it. Anyway, desire. Healthy desire, healthy relationship with desire. A lot of the things in our lives that are broken obviously come down to a broken relationship with the feeling, the person, the place, or the thing, which is really what the Black Swan Life podcast is about. The Black Swan Life podcast is really about examining our relationship with things, places, and people. Feelings being part of the things. But I was sort of reflecting today because I had an instance with a client the other day, recently, and a lot of my work with her really was getting her to be present within herself and within her body, be more vulnerable, be more open. And I know she won't mind me sharing this with you because she's already given me permission to. And it was a real tug of war with sort of getting her to be present within her own body and present to her own feelings and present to her own experience and present to what she needed, what she wanted, because she was present to, she wasn't present to her personal desires, her personal wishes, her personal wants. She was absent from a relationship with her own desires. So when we are absent to our own emotional, mental, spiritual being, desires of our hearts, the longings of our hearts, the truest longings, and often the desires that we have within ourselves, they're often way more pure and authentic. And when we really examine our own desires, they're often for nothing more than peace, joy, comfort. Suddenly in relationships, we find that if we are honoring to ourselves and we live in our body, we're going to find that what we really truly desire is often more connected to our bodies and connected to our truth. And often our genuine essence desires are never overwhelming. They're never too much for the other person, especially in a relationship, because assuming that person wants to love you and wants to be there, then often they're not too much. Things get too much and out of balance when we choose to make external things our desire. And often when we're making external things our desires, it's because we're really escaping from our personal true desires. How this works out in a relationship dynamic is that we start to put and project our joy onto the other person, because a lot of us, especially as women, we marry marriage. We obsess about the man, what he wants, what he needs, what he would desire. And I noticed with this particular client that she was married to her desire for this man more than she was married to her own desires. So when it was time to really just be honest, vulnerable, and open about what she needed, wanted, and creating, because the reason we use the word vulnerability, but many of us think that vulnerability is wearing your heart on your sleeve, is purging, is having verbal diarrhea, or just letting our feelings take control. Vulnerability is way more sophisticated and robust than that. It's often about owning the truth about how we truly feel. I was in the Black Swan Nation yesterday with the girls on our weekly live, and all of the ladies in there, all of the questions they were asking, all of the scenarios that we were working on rested on the unwillingness to be vulnerable. And truly vulnerable. It's easy to say things like, no, I'm not gonna take that, and if I take that, and I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna keep it moving. All those things are nice, but they're not actually speaking to the truth. The truth is that you feel anxious when he doesn't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You feel anxious, but anxiety is too vulnerable. It says I'm a human being, and it says that I can be affected, I can be weak, I can be less than perfect, I can be frazzled, I can be uncertain and inside. So what we do then instead is we get angry, we use emotions that we think are more acceptable, like anger, are usually the go-to, and then we put on a mask, and we present that mask to the person we're dealing with, and then we end up even more alone and more isolated in our ego, because we're not willing to be present with our desires, our desire to see that person, to own the fact that when I see the man that I'm dating and I interact with him, I feel good. I feel good when I see you. I feel good when I smell you. I feel good when I touch you. I feel safe, and I like to see you, and I like to touch you, and I like to smell you, because that makes me feel safe, and that makes me feel happy, and it gives me, butterflies. That's the truth. But often, instead of just telling him, seeing you kind of lights me up, and it really kind of puts a smile on my face. Instead of saying that to a man, we quarrel about, I just feel like you don't want to see me, like, we haven't seen each other for like 100 years, and I feel like you just don't care. I mean, is it really about all of those things? It's about the fact that you have a need to feel good right now, and you have a need to feel excited, and you have a need to feel alive, and he triggers that need. His presence in your life triggers that need. And isn't that such a gift to give another person, to let them know that I have a need, and you just being here and you being you, that lights me up. And I guarantee you that he's going to be more willing to be present with you when you're present with yourself, when you're present with your desire, when you don't disown your desire. A lot of what we do is we disown our desires, we repress them, we suppress them, we deny them, because we're so afraid to own the truth. So what we end up doing is creating chaos. Tangerine, hi darling. Tangerine says, oh, I just did that. I thought I over talk about how he makes me feel. Thank you. Chengi confirmed. You're welcome. Obviously, we don't want to overwhelm a man with, it's when you're dealing and operating from your essence, it's always enough. It's never too much. When we're dealing from our ego, then it's attached to our anxious attachment styles. It's attached to manipulation. It's attached to, I want you to know that I like you so that you can like me back. It's attached to things that are unhealthy, because the true essence of who we are is often a contented being that is comfortable with ourselves and loves ourselves for who we are and accepts ourselves for who we are. Your essence, your truest self, your real self is somebody that is whole and complete. And so whenever we speak from our truth and our essence, that is in truth being vulnerable. That is saying, hey, here I am in all my glory. Vulnerability is I'm not perfect. Vulnerability. I had one of the girls yesterday, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this. I'm not going to tell her story, but the general overview was the man that she was seeing was kind of upset that she'd stopped being her bubbly self. And I think he asked her something to the tune of, where's your beautiful self? And she was kind of like, well, she'll come back, and, all of these things. And, what we were discussing yesterday was, look, your non-bubbly self, that's your beautiful self too. That is you. That is there aren't parts of us that are beautiful and parts that are not. Even our anger can be beautiful if it's truly authentically the primary feeling, not the auxiliary feeling. So I was talking to a client yesterday, and I was explaining to her that today or yesterday that we have primary feelings and auxiliary ones, and the auxiliary ones only show up to emphasize the primary one. So for instance, a primary feeling can be something like sadness. All your feelings and all your emotions can be primary, but often we act on the auxiliary. So let's say you are sad. If you don't handle the sadness, acknowledge the sadness, recognize the sadness, know that this is sadness, and sit in the sadness so that you can process the sadness and address the things that need to be addressed. Because sadness, every feeling is a messenger telling us there's something wrong, something that needs to be fixed. So if you don't address that primary feeling, what's going to happen is an auxiliary feeling will come, which is anger, frustration. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use that auxiliary feeling to now attack or to get that need to feel better met, but you're going to do it from the wrong place, because the auxiliary feelings come from our ego. They don't come from our truest essence. So in the same way, if anger is coming from your essence, our essence, our truest self, our purest selves get angry too when we're violated. We get angry, and that's a righteous anger. If that is a primary feeling and you act on it and speak from it, that's a beautiful thing. But if it's an auxiliary feeling, then you are going to be so. In the case of Tangerine, telling a man how you feel, if that's coming from a need to manipulate him, to keep him, to get him to stay, or paint yourself to be what you're not, or just come across like an amazing woman, that's definitely going to backfire. But when it comes from your essence, when it comes as a genuine gratitude, it can do no relationship no wrong. Let's be honest. How many relationships have fallen apart because people are communicating vulnerably, intimately, and that's manifesting in celebrating each other. I mean, how many relationships have fallen apart because I celebrate you, I appreciate you, I acknowledge you, I am grateful for you. I don't know any, perhaps there is. There might be a relationship broke apart because one party was doing it and the other was not. I can understand, the need to, lovely breeze, love this place. You know, you are, one party is saying, you know, I appreciate you, I love you, I think you're amazing, I think you're kind, I'm so grateful for you, and the other one is just receiving. Of course that's going to fall apart, but I'm yet to see a scenario where, when two people are sharing in gratitude to each other and speaking from the essence, that there's you know, there's any harm in that. Albeit I know that in the dating world, and unfortunately I think we have, as leaders in the relationship and dating community, in a need to address players, toxic people, have started to teach people to keep their feelings to themselves and keep their emotions under wraps. And the fallout for that, which works when you're dealing with a predator or a narcissist or a player or somebody who's ill-intentioned. But when we educate people into believing that, you know, that is the only protocol for relationships, we end up with a scenario like the one with my client that I began telling you about, where eventually it ended a beautiful relationship that I could see was going to end in marriage, a beautiful relationship that was hitting all the cliff notes. Certainly in my years of experience and the thousands of women I've worked with, I always know when a relationship is going in the right direction. It took a swift turn because he had been consistently over time asking her to be vulnerable, you know, to let him in. But she had over time been taught to keep her stuff under wraps, not talk. And so no matter how much he was asking and I was begging her to please let him in, he eventually, you know, if a person has to ask you and beg you to let them in, often it's because eventually they will feel the connection will break. The emotional connection that they have with you will break. And once the connection breaks, the relationship ends, because connection is why we relate in the first place. Connection is why we choose to be with somebody in the first place. So when we were reflecting on it, it was really about her unwillingness to be present with herself. Now, I know that a lot of that has to do with trauma. And even when you heal trauma, because this is a client that I've worked very hard over a long period of time with, and I know that she's resolved a lot of her trauma. Unfortunately, the habits that were associated with the trauma, they take longer to drop. You used to react a certain way when something would happen. When you were triggered in this way, you would react a certain way. The reaction has become a way of life. The reaction has become how you now do life. The reaction is now your modus operandi. It's now your blanket. So some of us have done so much good work on ourselves and been through therapy and coaching, but we have developed behavioral patterns and little ways of being and reactions that have become default. Yes, thank you, Coach Nadine. They've become default, and so even though you no longer feel the feelings that come with it, you're still going to react that way anyway. And the only way that you can genuinely be present with yourself and the only way you can drop these default positions is to go inward. You know, the only way you can drop these positions is to go within yourself and ask yourself the question, what is true? You know, the girls in the Black Swan Nation are used to hearing me say to them, yeah, but what is the truth about that? And, you know, we can go around the houses for a while, but if you're in the Black Swan if you're not in the Black Swan Nation, That is minimum level entry to becoming a Black Swan. I mean a minimum level entry. And it's a paid subscription, monthly subscription that is worth every penny. You get access to all the coaches and myself, and we've just supercharged it, and we've just reinvented and restructured it, so it's going to be fantastic. You're going to be able to do silver, gold, and platinum. You're going to be able to access relationships and dating, because so many of our Black Swans are coupling up and getting married and getting engaged and coupling up. I mean, the levels, this pace at which people are coupling up in the Black Swan Relationship Academy is actually mad. So it has necessitated that we have more support for people in relationships. So that's meant that we've been able to create certain tiers. So if you're in a relationship, you'll be able to access the Black Swan Relationship Academy. If you are dating, you'll have your dating community. And of course, if you are married, you can join the relationship space as well, because we will be having our coaches and the specialist work in those groups. I'm really excited. I really want you to involve yourself in 2023 in the Black Swan Nation. It is minimum level entry. Doing one-to-one coaching with the coaches is, it's a considerable investment. And not everyone can afford it. I was talking to my client today, and I understood what she was saying. She was like, she feels so bad for women who cannot afford, the one-to-one coaching that she's been able to receive, and how it's just transforming. And I mean, the impact on her, and she just wishes every woman could access it. And I said to her, I do too. I wish every woman could access it. And because of that, I created the Black Swan Nation, because it is minimum entry. If you're committed, you can access the same coaches. Okay, you might not have an hour long committed to yourself, but trust me, the girls learn so much from each other. They learn so much from each other. I will be talking to one girl, or the coach will be answering one girl's scenario, and all the other girls are writing notes, and they're like, gosh, that's my scenario too, and I didn't see it that way. And so there's so much learning, and because the ladies in there are so transparent and are happy to talk. So that was a side note. That was me veering off. But I mentioned it because I'm often asking, what is the truth about that situation? What is the truth about your truest desire? And we have a hard time tuning into our truest desire. How we would love things to be in our relationship, how we would love things to be with him, how we would love him to be with us. We have a hard time. And as such, we have a hard time channeling our dark feminine energy. You cannot be truly sexy as a woman if you're not tuned into your dark feminine. And your dark feminine energy operates of the basis of desire and your relationship with it. If you have a broken relationship with desire, that looks like the following. Because you have no relationship with it, you just experience it as a thing in your body, you're going to sleep around. You're going to let anyone into your body and out of your body. You're going to you're going to go to places and be in places and access things that are going to ultimately harm you. You're going to get caught up in rage or anger. You're going to get caught up in extreme emotions because you desire it, and you have no relationship with desire. To have a relationship with a thing is to know it intimately, closely, and to constantly be connected to it in a healthy way. So if you don't have a good, healthy connection to your desire, and understand that desire was given to you by God himself, that you would know how you are particularly wired as a woman and as a unique individual. Desire helps you to figure out your unique DNA, your unique way of showing up in the world. When you have a good relationship with desire, your lovemaking, your intimacy, your lovemaking, your sex life is rich and fulfilling because it's yours and you own it. You own your sexuality. And this is something that we talk about a lot in the Black Swan Nation. I'm going to be having a podcast interview tomorrow with a Christian sex expert. So that's going to be fun. And we're going to be talking about a lot of the things that we need to unlearn. But I would probably say that a lot of the stuff that we need to... So I hope you're all listening to the Black Swan Life podcast. It's doing actually really well. It's doing really well. Everybody seems to be really wanting to listen to it. So that's really exciting for me. And while I'm here and I can't write my book because I don't have my laptop, I'm just going to do a lot of recording of the podcast. So definitely keep tuned. I'm going to try and be more consistent. I think there's a new episode every Thursday. And I've got guests on there, and some are just me being solo. But it's whenever we find that we have broken relationships with our sexuality, a misuse, a misconduct of our sexuality, when we find that when we are sexual, when we are intimate, we don't receive the full experience. 80% of women don't orgasm. I am not a sex expert by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm certainly not a therapist or a psychologist, but as a coach with a lot of field experience on the ground, it is often because of the broken relationship a lot of us have with desire, and how through religion and our misunderstanding of scripture and religious control, we've been taught to make desire a bad thing. So what we do is we react to it when we feel it in our bodies. So I see some questions here. Fantastic. I will get to you, I promise. Okay. So yeah, it's really, I want us to be, my energy is really slow today. I don't know if it's because I'm in Jamaica and everything is just particularly slow, but I feel like I'm like crawling along in this conversation, but bear with me. This is what happens when I think and speak at the same time. But, I want us all to work very hard at creating a healthy relationship with our desires. I want us to work really hard at acknowledging them and knowing that they cannot be wrong if they're coming from within you, and that they are asking for something. I read somewhere that there are 19 solutions to every problem. And I actually believe that there are 19 ways of addressing any emotion. So if you're feeling down and low, you can go eat yourself better. You can go hit the gym and get those endorphins going. You can read a book. You can distract yourself. You can sit in the emotion and let it work its way through. That's emotional mastery. You can do something wild and crazy to raise your dopamine levels. There are many ways of addressing an issue. And